Hey, what's up, y'all? Back with another Elden Ring video. I just want to start this video off by letting y'all know I make these videos from a place of disappointment, not hate. I got nothing against FromSoftware. I got nothing against this game. I'm just sharing with you guys my opinion and my experience. I want to talk about this game one more time since I finally beat the story and completed everything. And I'm just going to be brutally honest. This is the most inconsistent game I've ever played. It's inconsistent almost every way possible. AI, hit detection, collision detection, hit registration, storytelling, and overall polish. When it's good, it's amazing. When it's bad, it's absolutely horrible. Like some of the worst experiences I've had in gaming in a long time. The highs are high, but the lows are equally low. And for me, this all balances out to just an average game that's worse than past titles. And with that being said, I will still admit there are pieces and segments of this game that I generally like better than any other Souls title. But with that being said, it's just pieces and segments. As a whole game, this is easily the worst game that From Software has put out in a long time, in my opinion.
I originally was planning to focus more on the technical issues with this video, but I realized I was repeating myself a lot from the lowlights video, and I did not want to be redundant. So this video is focusing more on my opinions and my experience with the game. I tried to load all of the technical issues and errors towards the front of the video, but yeah, that's not really what I wanted this video to be about entirely. I really wanted it to be about my opinion of the bosses and the game design and the story.
I'm going to now shift my attention towards the bosses. Most of the bosses, in my opinion, were forgettable. The vast majority of the ones that stood out were just insanely frustrating and annoying. They stood out for the wrong reasons, like, Melania. And honestly, I didn't like any of I believe it's like the last six bosses. They were all a pain in the ass to beat, and they all basically fall into the category of what I'm describing here. My biggest issue was like getting one shot by like all of these bosses, no matter what I did. I went back and played previous titles, and this was not the case. I feel like a lot of the OP, hyper aggressive bosses and enemies were a half assed solution to the rest of this game's bad AI. And I feel like this carries over into, the regular enemy types like the Renvents and the Rune Bears. You basically have a 50-50 chance to win or lose every time you go up against these, creatures, and it's just a massive pain in the ass. Now, a couple people insisted that I raise my vigor. I ultimately raised my vigor to, I believe it was like 38. And then I got talismans and ended up bumping it up to like 40 something. And I still was getting one shot. I didn't really notice a difference. So that was my cutoff. I didn't really go beyond that. To be brutally honest, I feel like you could probably beat the entire game with like 38 vigor, because the way this game is constructed is, at least on the first playthrough, I don't think you're supposed to be trading with the enemies, like with the bosses. I feel like you're supposed to basically just melt everything. You're supposed to one shot or melt a lot of things. You're not, essentially, the game isn't structured like past games, so I don't believe you're supposed to be trading. I remember looking at like how a lot of people beat like Melania and a lot of the more challenging bosses. Is very few people that are like, timing their dodges down and actually ticking away at these bosses. It's usually somebody that has an exploit or something insanely OP or something that's broken or something that's going to get nerfed, and they're melting the boss. I honestly feel like this game punishes you for playing it like an older Souls title. A couple of the enemies and most of the bosses give you no chance to make a mistake. They are capable of insta-killing you no matter what once they've initiated their broken, overpowered attack string, and most of these have tracking. This, in my opinion, removes skill from the equation and makes most encounters an RNG luck-based gamble of who lands what first. After beating all the frustratingly hard bosses, I did not feel a sense of skill or accomplishment. I either melted them, cheesed them, or got lucky.
One of the things that really surprised me as a Souls vet was how important items were. And I'm not just talking about armor and weapons, I mean everything. Talismans, summons. There are so many things in this game I feel like you absolutely have to beat the game. And I mean, you look at comparison to Demon Souls or Dark Souls, and you had people doing naked runs. They were doing like naked level 1 runs. And it's like, yeah, people have done that in Elden Ring, but a lot of the people that did that, they did it within the first couple of months that the game released, and they used a lot of broken exploits that have since been nerfed into the ground. I played this game like maybe of like almost 9 months after it came out, so all that had been basically patched. and I tried to basically go through the game without leveling that much. I still was leveling, I still was wearing armor and all that stuff, but I was very much rushing through the game. I was not adding to my stats. I wasn't trying to, stack levels. I was just trying to get through the game, and I just quickly realized it's impossible. You have to make a build. You have to basically formulate a build that does a lot of damage, that has some type of survivability, because if you don't, the game is going to kill you over and over again. And it basically, you get one shot no matter what you do. So you have to have some type of build that deals a massive amount of damage, because you cannot trade with these enemies. They're basically just going to one shot you if you try to tick them.
What I ultimately realized when I was fighting the last couple of bosses of Elden Ring was I just wasn't having fun, and I simply didn't enjoy how they wanted me to play this game. Now, that's subjective and it's entirely my opinion, but I'm very adamant in saying the past games are not like this, so it's very weird that everybody's okay with such a stark change in a formulaic process that I personally thought was nearly perfect. Alright, next I'm going to shift my focus to the story. The story of a game is what carries you through the overexposure to any game's shortcomings, flaws, and faults. What I generally can't understand is how competent and consistent Elden Ring's story is towards the end of the game, especially when you look at it in comparison to the beginning of the game, which literally explains nothing. It legitimately feels like 60% of the story was just ripped from the final product. The story pacing present towards the end of the game should have been present throughout the entire game, but it's not. You are very clearly directed and informed on what to do to become Elden Lord, and even given different options on how to burn the Erdtree. Sadly, this level of clarity and flexibility is not present anywhere else in the game's story. Elden Ring's story is poorly constructed and disjointed, while also somehow being completely disconnected from its open world entirely. To further elaborate on this point, games like Saints Row 2 have the story concept of taking over the entire city interwoven into the game. The premise and the story of a good open world game encompass the open world and can't be done without it. Elden Ring can totally be done as a linear game. The vast majority of the open world is recycled filler content or dead space. I simply hated how they had so many different crafting recipes. They literally have 200 books and some of them only have one recipe in there. And it's like, I feel like it was just filler. I feel like a lot of the open world is just filler. Like, you go to these dungeons, you go to these locations, you clear them out, and it's an item that you really don't really care about. It's just some obscure bullshit that you're gonna throw into your inventory and keep it pushing. And one of the things that really annoys me about this game is there actually is a really good story here. There's actually interesting characters. There's this rich, detailed, vibrant world that they just refuse to tell you about. No text documents, there's no scrolls, there's just no type of information present in the game world. All you can get is, dialogue here and there from talking to a few people, but once again, it's poorly constructed, it's disjointed, it's nowhere near enough to piece together for this massive, massive world that's just devoid of any real storytelling. In closing, I want to say I actually did enjoy some of the time I spent with this game. It very much is a love-hate relationship for me. Like, there's times to where I'm having a great time, I'm like deeply invested. Then there's other times to where nothing really is connecting with me. I'm not enjoying like the encounters with the enemies or the bosses. I don't know what's going on in the story. I'm just basically aimlessly wandering. It's very much a duality in the sense. I do want to say that the Linked is a double-edged sword. On one hand, you get a lot of content for your money. On the other, you get a chance to spend more time with this game's many, many flaws, hindering this game at every turn. With a better story and more polish, this could have been something truly special. I feel like it's crazy because I do feel like it could have been what everybody was saying it was. It could have been Game of the Year. It could have been a perfect 10 if it had a better story, if it had more polish, if they just basically put more into it. Who knows? Maybe if they had a better time and they didn't have to, deal with COVID constraints.
In closing, I just want to tell you guys my least favorite bosses and my favorite bosses. And Estelle was my least favorite. I absolutely hated Estelle. Then Melania, those two were the worst bosses in the entire game for me. I hated having to fight either one of them. I didn't really have too much trouble with the Fire Giant, but I actually did like the Black Knight Tish. That was like the only hard boss that I actually enjoyed fighting. I actually liked a lot of optional bosses too, though. They weren't hard though; they were pretty easy. Most of the optional bosses were like really easy, but still, I actually did enjoy them. They felt like they weren't designed to be frustrating. Well, anyway, thanks for watching, y'all. Like, comment, subscribe. See you on the next video.